Hello, I'm Tom Hopkins. I'm an assistant professor at Bossier Parish Community College, and I teach programming. And today, what we're going to do in this segment is talk about Python and variables. Now, variable is a name that represents some value that's stored in the computer memory. So we're going to start from there. All right. Starting with these variables, we're going to look at not only the variables, we're going to look at using the variables in the code. We're also going to take a look at an example. And we're also going to talk about something called comments. It actually is a particular line or element that we use in programming. First of all, let's define a variable. A variable is a container in memory that holds some value. Okay? Well, you all know that there is a memory in a computer. So what we're going to do is we're going to reserve a small space in that memory area, and we're going to give it a name so we can address it whenever we need to, and then we're going to put a value in there. Now we can actually reserve that memory space by calling a variable name, and we don't really have to put the value in it until later. However, it will still reserve that space in memory, and it uses up memory to do it. It can hold a user's input. It can be a number or a text. Numbers and text, in Python there are two different types of numbers. We have an integer, which is a whole number. There are no fractions, no decimals. We also have something we call a float. Now, a float is a number that can be a fraction or a decimal number. And of course, they can also be negative numbers as well as positive numbers. And then we also have text, which we call, for some reason, a string. Now, a string, which is a straightforward text, we think of just the alphabet, but it's not. It's not just, in English, the 26 letters of the alphabet. It is also any symbol that we want to use. It's also any one of the 10 characters we call numbers. But if we declare it as a string, a number is now just like any letter character. And you can't normally, may or may not be able to use it in computations. These are called data types. So we've got three of them we're going to work with in Python: the integer, the float, or the string. Now, using a variable, allows us to use it in all sorts of different ways. And I'll go ahead and get my slideshow up back here. What it allows us to do is use a particular value over and over again. Let's say we've got a simple program, 100 lines, and we've used the number 40 over and over again. Let's say we've used it at least 10 times. Well, if we use it as a variable, make a name for it, and use it and make it equal to 40, now all we have to do is go change that variable value from 40 to whatever else we want, 50. Then we only have to change it once. But if you don't use a variable and you use the value in the programming, now you've got to hunt through all of the code looking for every time that you use that particular number. Make sure that the number that you're using it is the same reason, and now you've got to go back and change every one of them. And I guarantee you're going to miss at least one, even if on a small program. So variables allow us to basically state a value once, use it multiple times, and easily then change it to another value. Okay, variable format. How do you write variables? Well, we're going to give it a name. Then we're going to make an equal sign. And on the right side of the equal sign, we're going to give it the expression. For instance, hour worked is the name of a variable. And then what we're going to say is it's equal to 40.0. Now, of course, by writing it as 40.0, I've automatically declared it as a float. The variable name, when we look at the rules for these names, it has some very particular rules to make it work. A variable name cannot be a Python keyword. Could you imagine having a variable called print? And that doesn't work too well because print is a keyword. And it would run across that word and try to print something. The variable name cannot contain spaces. The first character must be a letter or an underscore. And the letter can be a capital or a lowercase, it doesn't matter. After the first case, you can use letters, digits, or underscores, but no special symbols. Variable names are case sensitive, which means that my example up there, hour worked, capital W, if we could also write it as hour worked with the lowercase w, those would be two separate variable names. And the last idea is the variable name should reflect its use. In my case, I've got hour worked. If you see that variable, you would immediately understand that the value is the number of hours worked. So the variable name should reflect its use. Okay, we've got the example, hours worked, notice I added an S to it, equal to 40.0. So this example follows the rules, doesn't it? It starts with a letter, could be an underscore, but nothing else. It has no spaces in it, and all the rules are followed. Now, you'll notice something, because we're not allowed to use spaces, we've got a little problem when we put two words together. Sometimes words sort of mix together and you're not too sure what it means. Well, we use something called camel case. I don't know who came up with this word to begin with, but it sort of makes sense. The first word is in lowercase, and then the following words, the first letter is capitalized. So now your eyes will automatically see two separate words. One is hours, and the second one is worked. We call it camel case because if you just look at it, it looks like the W forms the hump of a camel. And of course, if you've got two words that are capitalized, you've got a two-hump camel. So that's where the term comes from, and it makes sense. But that gives us an example to follow. Okay, you remember the flow charts. You may have seen that in our previous segment. So here I've got a program for you to solve. The client wants you to develop a program that automatically computes the gross pay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write this. We've figured out from the client what they want. We have done our homework. We have set up our algorithm. And now we've got our flow chart over here. Now we're going to write a program. So we start writing. And it looks like this. In our program, this particular one uses comments. So I'm going to go back and take a look at that in a minute. But we have a nice program here written. Notice it's got hours worked, hour rate, gross pay, and 3 print statements. Okay, you'll also notice that I've commented it. Now the comments are just statements for those reading the code. It is not meant for somebody, for the end user. They don't run in the program, okay? One of the things I'll ask you is only use it when it's necessary to clarify the code. In Python, you use a $, also called nowadays a hashtag, followed by a statement. Example, $, gross pay is hours times rate. Now we'll take a look at that, and you can see how it fits into the program here. You can see how this one is a comment that's at the end of the line of statements. and this is called an end of statement comment, or it can stand by itself on its own line, like here, where I've got the print statements just standing by itself. Okay, let's build the program. So we've got hours worked, and here we're going to go from hours worked. You see where my flowchart's got. I've got an hourly rate. Notice how the camel case works, is equal to 10.45. Notice I don't use any type of dollar sign or anything like that. It's just strictly a number. Then I've got gross pay. This is my calculation, hours worked times, and you notice I use a asterisk, times hourly rate. Now, I've got 3 print statements. Those 3 print statements are not really part of the program. However, what I wanted to do was I want to give the end user what the pieces actually mean. So I have the hours worked is, and you notice hours worked is in quotes, and then I've got a comma and hours worked. So now the variable hours worked is going to be brought back down and added to the end of the string or the sentence, the hours worked is. Okay. Let's take a look at how this looks in an actual program. So here I'm going to bring up Python, and we're going to bring up the other pieces. Now, here's my program that I've written over here, and I'm going to rearrange these just a little bit so we can see the pieces to it. Now you'll see on the right side, I've got the hours worked is equal to 40. The hourly rate is 10.45. Here's my calculation. And by the way, if you put a blank line in there, the program doesn't care. It doesn't use it. So now we've got a calculation of 40 times 10.45. Then I've got 3 print statements. Now if you'll notice the way this works is I've got the statement in quotes, then a comma, then hours worked. It's going to take this 40 down here and put on the end. Let me run it and I'll show you what I mean. So I've got run module, and you remember when we talked about it, we must save it. And this has been saved. And what you're going to see is the program is going to run on the left side. There it goes. Now you'll see how the hours worked is 40, the hourly rate is, and notice what I did was I put a dollar sign right here, then the quote, end quote, comma, hourly rate. By doing that, and notice that there's a space between the comma and the H, that space doesn't mean anything. But the comma itself comes with a space. So what it's got is the hours worked is, end the quote right here, and you'll see that the comma then provides us a space between is and 40. The gross pay is 418.0. Well, one of the things we might want to do with this is let's go in here and format gross pay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, in front of gross pay, I'm going to format parentheses. I'm going to go to the end of gross pay. Now here's the formula, comma, single quote, a comma for a separator, a period for the decimal, and then 2F, and then close my quote, single quote. And now because all parentheses have to be, the open and the close have to equal, when I hit the last one, everything turns gray, which means I've done good. Now if I run it, you'll see that the 418 is now in decimal form, and it looks proper for a currency amount. Okay. Now that we've built this program, I've shown you what variables are. Variables are nothing but a container in memory that holds some value. We've talked about comments. We've talked about building the program using the variables. And now, and we've talked about a little bit more about how to design programs by using this flowchart, how you can write a program against it. And so now, it's your turn. Use the same program or the same problem, just add one variable to it to calculate the gross pay for a month, for a whole month, given 4 weeks in a month. Print the monthly statement or monthly pay in a statement. Try it out by practicing. It's really the only way you're really going to get good at programming.